Hey everyone, so it's probably been, I don't know, like a week since patch 6.2 came out, and, well, time to have a bit of a chat about how things have panned out, what I've been doing in-game, what I've been thinking, and also, more importantly, what the rest of you have been thinking, because it's, the reaction on the internet has been, I suppose, not entirely unexpected, but sort of interesting in some regards, but, today I'm just going to talk about pretty much what's going on with my thoughts on the patch so far, and what I've been doing, because, of course, when you're, like, rolling around in the PTR, well, it's not really your character, so you don't particularly give a crap, whereas it's a pretty different experience when you're actually on the live game with your character, and you know that, like, whenever you grind up those Apexis crystals, that's actually going to transform into a bit of gear that'll help you in your raid, so pretty different. But overall, like, my opinions haven't really changed a great deal. Still, it's worth chatting about things. But first of all, like, let me know what you've been either doing in the game or just what you think about generally what's going on. This'll probably be like a more podcast-ish video, just a kind of stream of thoughts thing, not really a sort of scripted, super edited thing. So feel free to just, I don't know, go do other things while you listen. There probably won't be a great deal of visual stuff here, though I will throw in some Hellfire Citadel raid footage because I've been doing that, and fuck it, let's just start off with the topic of Hellfire Citadel. Well, as I expected, I'm having a lot of fun in Hellfire. I think it's really, really damn cool. So currently we're doing it on normal, and normal I think now is easier than normal mode has ever been, which is interesting. Normally we are a heroic guild and we don't touch normal, but there's been a ridiculous amount of burnout in my guild to the point where we missed out on Blackhand, on the Blackhand heroic ahead of the curve achievement because, well, basically nobody really could be bothered to log into the game. The amount of apathy is kind of ridiculous, and we're at the stage now where we can only feel like a 10 or 11 player team for normal, which is a little bit odd, I must say. But even at that, and even doing the normals once a week, which I suppose, like, I would like to do more raiding, which, there's a funny conflict going on there in my head, but still, I hopped into Hellfire Citadel, did normal, we got 4 out of 13 in our raid night, and we only had 2 wipes throughout the whole thing. It was a pretty chill night, pretty short raid night actually, only, I think it was like 2 hours. But here's what I've got to say about the bosses. So far, I think they are really, really good, very good actually. So starting off, you've got Hellfire Assault. Now, I don't think it's the most amazing boss ever, and yeah, it's a complete face roll, but guess what? It's the first boss. It's kind of supposed to be. That's its place. What I do like about Hellfire Assault, though, is it's one of those bosses which is a bit of a noob trap, in that you've got the situation where a lot of people they'll want to just throw out the mad cleaves, which are not the cleaves, like they're mad sort of full-on AoE and not cleaves, and it's one of those fights a bit like Blast Furnace, where it's really about killing specific trash mobs. I like that. I think overall, it's not the most overwhelmingly insane fight, but it's pretty fun. Moving on, you've got the Fel Reaver dude. I think that is a fun fight, a really, really fun fight. A part of it's because I just love Jaeger mechs in general, but I think its mechanics are fun, they're kind of visceral, I like how it's, it's flying up, it's throwing things at you. But I'm certainly, and this goes for all of these bosses, really looking forward to trying them with the higher number tuning on Heroic, so I dearly hope that we do end up stepping into Heroic, because I kind of feel like that's where you really feel the fight a lot in terms of its design. Next, we've got Crom, Rog, Cormac, Flor, Gok, Corma something, Gron, dude. Really, the Grons have all got really similar names. He was fun, actually. I like the mechanic with the way he jumps into the different pools and it, like, empowers different abilities. Again, a pretty simple fight. We wiped on it once because of general derping, but, yeah, solid enough fight. And then Hellfire High Council was, it's strange. Like, I thought it could have done with a little bit more going on, but again, it could just be that we were in normal. But I still did have a lot of fun, and there were some aspects of the cleave in that fight that were just lovely as a marksmanship hunter, where my Chimera shot, which is my single target ability, also cleaves, so with whatever way we were doing it, it worked out quite well. But overall, yeah, Hellfire Citadel looking really strong. I've been watching loads of streams of heroic progression, and the bosses look really fun later on as well, so I think Hellfire Citadel is a massive win, certainly from a lot of the, like, raiding population, like the really hardcore guys, like, like Final Boss and all that, and from talking to them, it would appear that the reception to this in terms of the actual raid initially is maybe a bit better than Blackrock Foundry, and I think that's definitely something that's that's really good. However, there is a big issue with class balance. If you look in Simcraft, it's insane. If you look in-game, it seems to be pretty high as well, because I know Simcraft isn't always representative of the in-game stuff. But yeah, they really, I think, need to nail down some of the balance numbers at the minute. I mean, hell, as an MM Hunter, like, my burst is insane, and this will actually, that's the thing that will come up again in Mythics, because a lot of people have been saying Mythics are really hard. I've been finding them face roll. I'm pretty sure it's because I'm playing an MM Hunter, and the insane, ridiculous burst of that spec means that fights actually are really short. Because, of course, if you're in a 5-man, you know, you're 1/3 of the DPS, and if someone else is there with great burst, but that's the topic for later on. So yeah, Hellfire Citadel, really cool, great impressions, cannot wait to sink my teeth into more of it. Now, one thing that's a bit odd, I suppose, is the gear. Like, it's only eye level 690, it's actually worse than the Apexis stuff, so gear has not at all been a really motivator for those fights, and in fact, we're not going to reset our lockout, we're going to extend it so we can continue progressing, because we're mostly all geared up with our Blackrock Foundry Mythic gear anyway. But yeah, that's basically it for Hellfire Citadel itself. However, there is a big lore topic that needs to be covered. And I'm not going to do the whole thing because I want to do a proper video where I research the lore and think and speculate about what could be happening. But we got the final cinematic of this patch. Whether that's the final cinematic of Warlords of Draenor itself, who the hell knows? I have no idea. I mean, Ian Hazzikostas did suggest there'd be more stuff in WoD, so maybe we would get like an interim non-raid patch, maybe we'll get a Farallon raid patch. Hard to say, but yeah. Right, I don't know if I want to go into full spoilers here. I think I might, because, yeah, actually, I'm going to have to go into full spoilers here. What I'll say is I don't think it's a story that's worth being, like, savoured or anything, because I think it's pretty naff, actually. But what goes on, essentially for this final cinematic is, you down Archimonde, Gul'dan is basically trying to run away into a portal, and then Archimonde's like, ha, pew pew pew, shoves him into the portal, screams about, you know, oh, we signed a pact, does his general stuff, then he dies. You know, air quote dies, he's a demon, so he'll go back to the Nether, whatever, that's fine. But the bit that gets to me the most out of all of them is Grommash motherfucking Hellscream. This guy he did some pretty douchey things to us. And what happens is he sort of, you know, like raises his axe and says, Draenor is free, he does his big, you know, epic shout thingy. And the weird thing is, who's beside him when he says that? Durotan. Durotan, whose clan was completely, like, obliterated, or, you know, badly hurt anyway, by the Iron Horde. He gets, you know, he's all like, yeah, Grom, we're friends now. At the very end of the cinematic as well, Yrel turns back, and, like, the final shot is of Durotan, Yrel, and Grommash all being happy about their victory, and that just makes no sense to me. Grom he genocided the Draenei, he sort of genocided the orcs that didn't really side with him. You know, all things considered, bit of a dick. A pretty badass guy, yeah, but also total dick, and I don't really think it made a lot of sense what happened there in terms of the lore. It seems like Blizzard are trying to force him into being some kind of now good character. I mean, sure, maybe he's a bit sympathetic because Garrosh sort of, you know, manipulated him into doing stuff when all that stuff went down at the start of the expansion, but still, like, if that were to happen in real life, we'd be like, right, okay, you helped us out in the end, because Grom does sort of help us out, you know, with his, he lends his axe a bit, but after that, you'd be carted off to The Hague and you'd be done in for war crimes. And I know this is a different world, obviously, but I just don't think that made any sense from the perspective of any of the characters involved. It was just very silly. You know, I think a lot of this is indicative of Warlords of Draenor's development. And, you know, I'll try to flesh out opinions more on this in an upcoming video about the lore specifically, but Tanaan Jungle was supposed to be a leveling zone, right? It's supposed to be your final leveling zone. What has that done to the story now that it might be like the final raid tier or a middle raid tier? It just seems like a lot of the character stuff hasn't really turned out maybe how they would have originally planned, and they had to just sort of shove stuff in to kind of make it work. But that cinematic, honestly, it was a big disappointment for me. I mean, sure, it looked cool, but I do actually enjoy the lore and the story stuff, and I think they really messed it up. That's just a little bit of a pity. And if you actually look at the trailer that MMO, or the video that MMO Champion posted up, you know, it's got like a 60% like rate. And I think that just shows a lot of people are just sort of saying to themselves, come on now, this lore is a bit silly. Blizzard, like, it's dumb. Anyway, that's a pity. Now, moving on to another thing, we've got Tanaan Jungle. Tanaan's weird. It's the sort of thing you do it because, you want to gear up your main, but I struggle to find the motivation to do it because the gameplay's fun. I mean, I sort of do it because I want to get that Empowered Apexis gear so I can help out my raid team, because I'm not trying to up myself here, but, I'm one of the higher DPS players, and I feel like I've really got to try to make sure we overall have got a good amount of DPS in the team. So for that reason, I want to do all my Tanaan stuff. I'm working my crafted gear at the minute, because the average, group's DPS needs to be high enough to get past mechanics and stuff like that. So I feel like I'm doing Tanaan for the rewards, not necessarily the fun. Now, it's not that bad because I can do Tanaan in 20 minutes flat now, maybe 30, but you can do Tanaan super quickly. But I just don't think the content's that fun. I thought that way back in the PTR, well, not way back, like last week, and I think that still has remained the case. And I just, the motivations of Tanaan are weird. You get those 3 factions, but it's like, the Saber Stalkers, they're not fun. I don't really want to grind mobs for a while, so that's a bit of a pity in Tanaan. And then, in terms of the other things, I mean, the Order of the Awakened, they're not new content, they're just like the same quest you do again and again. You would have done that quest anyway. Same goes for the Hand of the Prophet. Big missed opportunity, pretty sad, and I would have loved some, story fleshing out for all of those guys. And speaking to guild members and people that I know, and just, gathering other people's opinions, it seems like a lot of people seem to think the same thing about Tanaan Jungle. I just don't see much excitement surrounding it. And it also, I think, suffers from the idea of you go there, you're there for 30 minutes in day 1, and you feel like you've experienced all the zone has to offer in terms of the main content. And I think that is true. You do your Apexis, and it's like, right, well, there the Apexis quest done. It's day 1, and I've unlocked all of the content of Tanaan. It's not like with 6.2 or 5.2 where, every week there would have been some new quest because you unlocked more of the island, or... It's not like that. Like, the whole thing, you just get it there in day 1, and that's that. And it's like, sure, you could hunt down, equipment for your shipyard by going and killing the specific rares, and I actually did do that for the whale shark, but I don't think that many people even care about the shipyard, so all that stuff's falling a little bit flat for me. I'm just glad that I really am enjoying Hellfire Citadel, and I do feel this urge to raid more than I am currently, so I don't know what I'll do about that, but at least there's, that Hellfire Citadel's a hook that is definitely keeping me excited about playing on my main character, but I just don't think it's the case that I'm going to be using loads of alts or anything like that. I just don't think I can be bothered. But still, HFC, pretty cool. Let's move on to another topic, and that is the Garrison campaign. The last time I did it was, on the PTR, was quite a while ago, so I thought maybe they changed some things, maybe they tuned it up, something like that. I got the Auchindoun mission on one character, and I got the Kilrogg mission on another character, and it was, so asinine. The Auchindoun one lasted, I think, about 6 minutes of actually being an Auchindoun, and there was 0 challenge. I mean, just to test if it was tricky or not, I actually stood in one of the boss's mechanics, and Spirit Bond was nearly healing me for more than it was doing, which I just think is so sad, because even if that character was eye level 630, it still wouldn't be that much damage. And then I did the Kilrogg one on a rogue, which is item level, 650, but, literally no enchants, no nothing like that, and it was still piss easy. And I just think that's really a pity, because I would have loved a challenging campaign to sink my teeth into that would have lasted a bit longer than the current one did, so yeah, bit of a pity there. Moving on to the shipyard, well, the shipyard's funny. I think I've been able to mitigate a lot of the frustration with the shipyard because I've been using the instant mission completion things from the Spirit Lodge, and that's got me past the main stuff that I care about pretty quickly, so I think that's certainly, it's okay. I mean, I prefer the shipyard to the follower system because I can just sort of do it and that's it. I can leave it for a day or two. I don't feel like I'm constantly sort of Skinner boxed into going back to collect my little, reward pellets every few hours. So that's definitely a plus about the shipyard, but I still don't think it's great gameplay. And, I heard an interview actually with Corey Stockton, who is one of the lead designers for World of Warcraft, so he's pretty, big dude when it comes to what's going on with the game. And it was his interview with Scott Johnson of The Instance podcast, and when Corey was talking about the shipyard, he kept on saying, oh yeah, we wanted to make something feel new and fresh and exciting and really, be a good extension to the Garrison system. And it's just like, dude, do you actually play this game? I mean, really, man? Do you know what people seem to think of this Garrison system? And I will be talking about player feedback sometime in the future, because I think, given the last few months, it absolutely is a topic that needs to be discussed, and what that's like for game designers, but I just think there's a bit of a disconnect there, if that's truly what he thinks about the shipyard. I don't think it's fresh, I don't think it's hip, I don't think it's cool, and the saddest thing about it for me is that it's so beautiful, it's so pretty, the ships are so cool. Like, I love the art, I love the aesthetic there, but there's no gameplay to back it up and make it feel really good. That said, though, I do like what they did with the map and the bonus missions. I think that's a nice little touch, so thumbs up on that. But I don't want Facebook games in my main PC game that I sit down and want to play for a few hours when I'm done doing work. I think that's a wee bit of a problem. And what I would have loved from the shipyard is, you know, maybe we could have the system we currently have, but I would have loved a flagship that was like my own character ship. And maybe it couldn't be destroyed if you were to send it on missions. It would just be like, decommissioned for like 2 days while it was repaired. But what I would have loved is to be able to hop on your flagship and then go off to do like some quests in a little island, a little bit like, say, the Isle of Giants that came in 5.2, which was a bit of different content. You could have had multiple different islands that you could have like ventured off to, and not big islands, just like with a tiny wee bit of content. It's something small, but maybe a bit different. I would have loved that, but unfortunately, just, you don't feel like a naval person in your shipyard. It's that sort of situation where it's got all that beautiful art, but does that beautiful art actually mean anything to the gameplay? And the answer is no, and that really is kind of unfortunate. Now, let's move on to more bright and happy topics. Yes, I know we were getting perhaps a little bit sad there, and we've got the topic of Mythic Dungeons. Now, Mythics are a bit strange. I've seen loads of conflicting reports about how tricky people find them. And it's funny, personally, I've not had a great deal of difficulty doing them. I have not been doing them with guildies, I've been doing my mythics exclusively with pugs from the group finder tool that is available in-game, so I don't think I'm getting any special experience. And what I'm finding is, okay, maybe you'll have the average of 1 or 2 wipes per instance, but it's really not that hard, and generally the wipe is because someone derped or, something silly, which is totally fine. And I suppose, personally, I would have liked just that little bit more difficulty. But when I talk to other people and see that for some people, actually, this is pretty challenging. I don't mean like on a personal level, I mean just overall success rates and like the factor of you do a pug and then someone kind of derps, and it just seems like some people are finding stuff tricky. Maybe it's to do with group compositions and class balance and things like that. I suppose I have had a little bit of a benefit of being a marksmanship hunter, and if you're not aware, like, Hunters, we burst like 125k DPS, and because I've got a crap ton of potions, like, I'm pre-potting and I'm flasking because I just have them anyway, so I think because of all of those reasons, the actual fight times when I'm doing these are really low. Like, they're really, really, really quick to do. Which maybe means the fights don't really play out with their full difficulty, perhaps. Now, that said, some of the fights have been sort of challenging. I mean, Arachnath, actually, in Skyreach, I've seen healers actually have quite a bit of pressure there, and that seems to be fun. As a DPSer in like fighting Arachnath, I had to really pay attention to what I was doing, and I think that was really cool. So, some of the mythics to me just feel just a little bit boring, but some of them also feel pretty good. So, overall, I think in terms of how it's panning out since when I tested it, it is actually a little bit better. I mean, I remember Asmongold was, like, when it first came out and he was doing it in the PTR with, like, 3 of his friends. They weren't even in a full group and it was a total face roll. It would seem like it's definitely a lot trickier than that, so that's totally a good thing. And the other interesting thing about the mythics is the gearing that comes from them. Now, if you don't know, every single boss has a chance of giving you Warforged gear in a mythic, but it's not just +6 item levels, no. The normal gear is item level 685. Warforged is up to 705. Now that is interesting because 705 is better than most of the normal mode raiding gear. So I think what this does, or at least should do for a lot of people, is provide something in the game that they can do outside of their normal raid that progresses their character, and I think that's really nice. I personally think for that niche that it should be a bit harder, but it seems that overall it's kind of well received from what I can tell. And if that's the case for most people, then I'm totally happy to concede that that's good. But still, I suppose I would have liked a little bit more difficulty. In terms of the overall pacing of gear, now that's what I find interesting. Because it's only the Warforged bits of gear that are actually that great item level from the Mythics, it means you're not getting gear like all the time. I've done 4 of them and I've got 1 upgrade. that was Warforged. And I actually feel like that is a pretty good pace, because when I got that 705, I was actually excited about that bit of gear, because it was like, wow, you know, I put in the time, you know, I did 4 of these dungeons, I really tried to do them, that was fun, and I got a bit of gear at the end, and it didn't feel like I go into a dungeon, I put in a bit of effort, and I get like a million bits of gear that are all amazing. No, I think the gearing's actually paced out to be sort of pretty decent, actually. It feels like you put in some effort, and you get a decent reward based on that effort, so that's kind of nice. Now, there is one thing that they are doing with the Mythics, and that's that they're actually tripling the chance for the stuff to be Warforged from the Mythics. Now, that's a bit of an interesting topic. I think that might push it to the point where the Mythics are too powerful in terms of the reward. However, I've only done 4 Mythics, and I've got 1 Warforged from that. I could have just got lucky, so we'll have to see how that pans out once the change actually makes it into the game. But still, Mythics, I'm doing them, they're giving me something to actually do outside of Tanaan Jungle, and they are moderately fun on my main, so yeah, I'm happy with them. However, I'm still doing Mythic Skyreach, I'm still doing Mythic Shadowmoon. I've done these dungeons before, right? And I've got to say, new dungeons would have been so nice. And yeah, the Time Walker stuff's fun, but look, Time Walker and Mythics, they're both fun-ish, whatever, but they're not new dungeons, and this is a point I'm going to keep on bringing up, because I think it's something the Blizzard I think it's something they should really do. So, bit of a pity there on the whole Mythic topic, with there not really being any new dungeons, bit of a pity. And moving on to the Time Walkers, though, Time Walkers are funny. They could actually make them really good by doing 1 or 2 simple things. First of all, I would say a little bit more tuning in the mob health, so the time to kill is a bit longer for mobs, especially bosses. Bosses should nearly have double the health they currently do, because we're at the stage now in those Time Walkers where everyone is scaled down to roughly the same item level, or exactly the same item level, yet you don't see half the fights, or you at least don't feel like you're seeing half the fights, because they all die so darn quick. So what they should have done, I think, is increase the health pool of the bosses a little bit disproportionately so that they're decently big, and then what they should have done is they should have went into each single boss fight, and they should have increased the frequency at which those bosses actually executed their mechanics. Because back in TBC, right, like those boss mechanics were not super hard, they weren't super complex in comparison to what we get today. I mean, take, say, the very first boss of, Shadowmoon Burial Grounds, and what she does, and compare that to what was going on with, say, Kilrogg, when he's the final boss of the Shattered Halls. Like, the first boss in Warlords of Draenor mechanically is more complex, and it's harder. Like, that's just a fact. Now, the reason in the Burning Crusade why that, at the time would have been perceived to be more hard is because all of the tuning was tighter. Actually playing your class and doing good damage, and those numbers were just a lot tighter, right? So the mechanics were, I think, a lot more tied into just the base numbers of your characters rather than the actual mechanics of the fights. I think what they should have done with the Time Walker dungeons is just made it so the bosses did, like, I don't know, double the mechanics. So a lot more of them going on. A bit like, say, some bosses will have a haste buff, which also increases the rate at which they do their mechanics. It's actually something Blizzard have done before. I think that would have been really cool in the Time Walker dungeons. And, of course, there's still a lot of time in the future for that system to be added to, so they could do it. Now, another thing about the Time Walker dungeons is they Warforge up to 675. That's something I should have picked up on in the PTR. Sorry about that. Yeah, I think that's a little bit too high based on what the content is, but a lot of people pointed out to me on Twitter that, look, they're only here for like 1 weekend a month, so maybe that's okay, and I suppose I can concede that it's okay for their gear maybe to be a little bit better if they're not a constant bit of content, so I guess I can give you that one. But the other weird thing about the Time Walkers is the Warforged, or Time Warped chance, basically to get them up to 675, has been doubled in a hotfix. So they're a very powerful way of getting gear in your characters. Now, one actually fun side effect of that, which I think is, it's a little bit of a nostalgia tickle, I must be honest, but it's the way that you now have characters running around in TBC clown gear. I just think it's very charming to me, so that's totally it's a pretty nice topic. And with the Time Walkers as well, what I have found is they're kind of relaxing for me to do. I did a few of them on my healer earlier today, and I just turned off the in-game like sound effects and just like cranked up the music. And I've got to say, right, the music of those old dungeons and just the way Blizzard used to do their music back in the day, so atmospheric, so mood setting, especially in the Mana Tombs. I love the aesthetic, love how the music played in. So a decent little relaxing experience, I suppose, but I would like the bosses to be a bit harder and to actually matter a little bit more. I suppose one last point is that the damage that is done on players, I think, it's a bit spiky. Like, some mobs do a lot more than others, but at times it does actually feel decent. I remember when I was doing it on my healer, and in Shattered Halls, when the two guys, they were the champions, the sort of harder trash mobs that are in that instance, whenever they would try to kill the tank, like, I noticed, damn, this tank's taking a bit of, enough damage for me to actually have to use Swift Mend and properly try to heal the dude up. So I suppose sometimes there is gameplay to be found in there. Oh, and it is funny in Mana Tombs when the boss that has his, like, void thingy, the very first guy, when he does his damage reflect, and then everyone just tries to do big dick DPS, and then it's like, okay, I now have to pop Tranquility because everyone's dying. Yeah, I've got a feeling people will come to learn that mechanic quite quickly. So overall in Time Walkers, well, yeah, decent enough. I wish they'd have done some other things. I suppose it's a one-off little event, whatever. They're fine. They're hardly offensive or anything like that. They do the job well enough. I just think they could have been better. And, of course, they are no replacement for new dungeons. No, Blizzard, they're not. If you think they are, they're not. And honestly, they could have implemented time walking in a manner that I think is a lot more fun. There could have been, like, unique transmog stuff. They could have tied it into, like, a faction. You know, just more sort of creative ways of doing it, I suppose, than just, oh, do 5 and you'll get a seal for your bonus rolls. I mean, come on, that's a little bit boring, isn't it? Yeah, more unique rewards would have been nice. Maybe they could have had a mount involved in the whole thing that wasn't a boar. Wouldn't that be exciting? Now, moving on from the dungeon stuff, we've got PvP. I feel so sorry for the PvP community. It's, I know, like, you guys have had a rough time this expansion. You really have. I mean, I've heard class balance has been worse than in a lot of other times, that, you know, the ability prune has really sort of messed some stuff up for the PvPers. I hear that right now it's still got that sort of situation where damage with cooldowns is too high, but damage outside of cooldowns is too low, which means that healers are super powerful. For most of, like, your time in an arena. I hear there's all those problems. But then moving on to Ashran, Blizzard made changes such that Ashran was 100% necessary if you were a serious PvPer who wanted to be up to date with the gear curve. If you don't know what that means, basically, every week there's a weekly quest in Ashran. If you do all your weekly quests, then you get a box which has a bit of offset conquest gear. So that's top tier, like, good gear, stuff that you absolutely want to have. And you need to do Ashran for it. But whatever changes they've done, basically now, the queues for Ashran are insane. On my server, they're always 2 hours. I wanted to go into Ashran to see what was going on, to see the new zone that's underneath Ashran. I wanted to also get some of that gear, so it would be useful in my raid for the following lockout. But I looked at it and I saw, oh, 2 hour timer. Well, that means I've got to wait 2 hours, then I go in, then I've got to do 2 quests, which are weeklies. Now, a weekly quest is designed to be done over maybe, say, 4 separate sessions of Ashran. That's 4 2-hour queues. And I know that's only in my server, but I've, you know, looking on Reddit, looking on, you know, various forums, talking to other people, other YouTubers. Asmongold actually reported in one of his sort of 6.2's released, what's the crack kind of video. He was saying that on his server, he's looking at a 2 hour thing as well. So it seems like a lot of servers have got big Ashran queues, and that sucks because it's so mandatory if you really want to do PvP. And I get this feeling where a lot of the PvPers, they just want to be able to do their arenas, do their battlegrounds, and then just have more content in the game that supports that gameplay. So that's a bit of a pity, and honestly I think there should, in Tanaan Jungle, be some PvP objectives as well, because it worked out quite well in the Timeless Isle from what I hear, so why not do it in Tanaan? I just think that's a bit weird. So PvP, I think it's just fallen flat, and honestly, like, if all you do in World of Warcraft is PvP, I don't even know if it's worth being subscribed. The whole thing just sounds really depressing to me, and I just think it's so unfortunate how that's all panned out. And 6.2 just, it doesn't look like it's done a great deal to really fix that. Now, personally, in the PTR, I really like the idea of what they were doing with, you know, making it so you had to kill other people to do your weekly quest, thus making it so that even though there's a lot of PvE in Ashran, no, you have to kill people eventually. I thought that was good, but it seems like what's happened is, there's like just weird things where, like, you know, the Horde goes off in one direction to do some things, the Alliance goes off in another direction. I don't know. I don't do enough Ashran. I just hear there's big problems, and it's unfortunate. I think at this stage it's been what, coming on 3 years since we've got an arena, and like 2 since we've got a battleground, maybe 2.5, whatever. So, like, man, that's a lot of time for the PvP population not to be supported by more of the regular content that they do most of the time. So it's a little bit ridiculous as far as I'm concerned. Now then, that's pretty much all the stuff of patch 6.2 covered. Overall, what do I think? Well, look, no surprises here. I don't think it's the best patch ever. I do think that Mythic Dungeons have turned out okay, actually. They've turned out pretty well. I would have liked them a bit harder personally, but it seems like overall maybe they've struck a decent balance. Give me your feedback on that. That's one of the things that I'm the most keen to actually hear about, is what people think of the difficulty of the Mythic Dungeons. But still, I've been going in there on my character, I've been getting, bits of gear that have taken a good bit of time and effort, so I suppose that is definitely fair enough. Time Walker, I don't think it's the best thing ever, but sometimes it's relaxing, bit of a different thing to do, so I suppose we can count that as a plus, but big negative is the lack of new dungeons. It's a bit of a pity. The Shipyard, absolute, boring, yawn, whatever, don't care. Garrison Campaign, like, I've done 5 of the missions at this stage. Like, I haven't done the final one, but I've done all the other ones. They're all crap. I mean, maybe there is cool lore in some of them, but they're crap. They're not fun gameplay. So I think the Garrison Campaign is an absolute flop. They have not been able to do anything as interesting as 5.1 or 5.2 so far, which boggles my mind, because they did stuff that was brilliant back then. Or not brilliant, but, it was pretty good. It was innovative. It was new. It was, to borrow Corey Stockton's word, it was fresh. And this doesn't feel fresh. And it's just so neutered as well in terms of the difficulty. Moving on to Tanaan Jungle. It's got some cool things in it, whatever. It's got boring Apexis missions, it's got really boring reps, it's got Doomlord Kazak, I suppose he's fun, but it's not what I was looking for. It's more of the same, but admittedly a bit better, but I'm not looking for more Apexis missions. What I would have loved in Tanaan is, like, for an example, if you're doing Apexis mission after Apexis mission every day, there's no change there, you're just doing the same fucking missions. Why could those Apexis missions not maybe unlock story quests with the Hand of the Prophet that weren't the Garrison Campaign, or maybe story quests that would flesh out the Order of the Awakened? It just seems like the Garrison Campaign has actually homogenized a lot of that into a really boring system, but, why is there not progression in Tanaan? Why does it not change based on what our server does? They were able to do that stuff in the past and at least kept things fresh over a few weeks. Everyone who I've talked to about Tanaan, well, nearly everyone, has said, like, I hopped into Tanaan on day 1, I did all my Apexis missions, and I was amazed that was really it. And I think that's the experience that a lot of players have had. So there you go, that's pretty much my thoughts on patch 6.2 so far. And the reason why this video is coming out a little bit later is, of course, A, I wanted to play some of the patch, but B, I think it was more important to get all those guides out there so that they could help people, because I think, doing a guide which helps people, I still think that's more important than my opinion video about the patch, so I suppose that's why this is coming out a little bit later. I still will make tip videos and things like that when, of course, they're relevant and when I think of something or discover something that's cool. In terms of content that's coming out on the channel over the coming days, I want to talk about some game design stuff. I think that should be a lot of fun. We've got class quests there on the docket, a few other things, which I think are topics that really resonate with a lot of people who have played the game for quite some time, so that should be fun. I've also got another sort of promotional thing going on with Albion Online. Some of you will have remembered that I did that, I think, back in January or February, because, well, it sort of seemed to tickle that RuneScape itch for me. So I'm doing that again. They've done like a whole bunch of pretty cool updates to the game, so I'll be checking that out. That's roughly what's going to be going on for the next week. It should be fun. I may get back into streaming as well. Now, that is contingent on a few things happening, but it's absolutely a part of the long-term plan, is I want to do a bit more streaming, because it's quite fun. So, that's it for me. That's the sort of 6.2 week-long run, or, over rundown thingy. Let me know what you guys thought about the patch so far in the comments. Thank you very much for watching the video, and I will see you next time.